Inna lillahi wa inna ilayhi raji'un. Our deepest condolence to Imam of a time, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, for losing his entire family in one day. And motivation is Bibi Zainab Salamullah alayha, how she upholded Islam, how she motivated us to stand against the oppressors of her time. This is your host, Sister Zinat, and with me I have a scholar, Alama Maryam Muaddal. Assalamu alaikum, sister. How are you?
Walaikum assalam. Alhamdulillah, I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you very much.
Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقهوا قولي. السلام على الحسين وعلى علي بن الحسين وعلى أولاد الحسين وعلى أصحاب الحسين.
So we started the discussion of Surah Fajr, and I was reading out the translation in the last episode. And the main interesting part is that how is it connected and related with Imam Hussein alayhi salam? This is the explanation that you will be giving to the audiences.
Yeah. So Surah Fajr is interesting because it's called the Surah of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, and it's talking about the perspective that we need to have in terms of life and how Allah sees life and the perspective that human beings have and what when they don't believe in what they have. So I'm going to go through some of the verses and go through the translation. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim wal-Fajr wa-layalin ash wa-shafi wal-wat wa-layalin wal-layli idha yasr. So here we see that Allah gives the swearing by Fajr, by the dawn, by the 10 nights, by Shafin wal Watr, by even and odd, and by the night when it's past. So the meaning of these 4 verses, it has both a natural definition and also a meaning, and also a metaphysical meaning. What do I mean by that? So when we say al Fajr, what do you think? When you hear Fajr,
it's the morning.
Morning.
Yeah.
In Arabic, it means morning. Also means Fajr prayer.
Yes.
Right. When we say Wallayl al-Ashr, by the 10 nights, it is referring to the 10 nights of Zil Hajj, the first 10 nights, and it also is referring to the 10 prayers, the prayers of those nights. Again, so you see it has a metaphysical aspect, the prayers, and it also has a time. It's mentioning the time, a specific time, and also it's mentioning a specific prayer. What does it come to your mind when you hear Shafi wal Watr? Do you know?
No.
Nothing comes to your mind. So Shaf and Watr are the 2 prayers in Salatul Layl. The last 2 prayers.
Yes, the Shifr and Watr, yes.
It also means,
right.
Shaf also means 2, Watr also means 1.
Yes.
So it's also the time, that morning time. It also is referring to...
How it's connected to Salatul Layl, the night Salat.
Yeah.
That's right, the 2 rakat and 1 rakat.
And also with Witr, it's also, it can also refer to after Isha prayer, there's a mustahab prayer to be done.
Yes.
Sitting down.
Yeah.
Which counts as one rakat, which when you're doing it, we're supposed to be doing sit down, so you do 2 rakat.
2 rakat, but that's counted as 1 because you're sitting down.
So that's also Batrus. And so when the night ends. So it's talking about a physical phenomenon of the time where Fajr is happening and where there's a shift between night and day. Because before Fajr time, the night ends, right? That's when dawn is about to break and the sunlight starts to hit, and there's a change within the world, right? And this is something we see this on a daily basis. Every single day, the sun comes out, right? And there's a shift between night and day. So it's referring to a physical thing, but it's also referring to a metaphysical thing where we're doing prayers, right? These are the time for prayers. These are the time for making du'as. And also with Layal al-Ash, the 10 nights, it's talking about also the specific time when we're doing du'as. And this is Wallayl idha yasr, so when the night's done. In the metaphysical term, it's saying that a human being comes from darkness into light. When Allah guides them, through the du'as and the prayers that they do, they come out from that darkness and they come into light, right? I mentioned that verse يهدي به الله من اتبع رضوانه سبل السلام ويخرجهم من الظلمات إلى النور ويهديهم إلى الصراط المستقيم. That Allah guides people who do what Allah wants from darkness to light. So there's a shift that happens. There's a change within human beings, and it's also, this is what the verses are trying to say, that there's a change within a human being when they are going, when they're doing these du'as, when they're doing their prayers and whatnot. And it's something that you kind of see as well through the system of Ashura, the system of Muharram, the 10 nights that we do all of these amal, and we do the nohas and the latmiyas and all the storytelling, the crying, all that. There's a shift that happens within human beings. It's also not just with du'as and prayers. It happens through narrating the story of Imam Hussein alayhi salam. So we see this. هل في ذلك قسم الذي هجر. It says here, after the four things that Allah swears by, Allah is saying in the 6th or 5th verse, is there not a lesson for those who understand? And He's saying, can you not take a lesson from this? And then the next several verses, Allah is talking about the stories of the people who transgressed, right?
Yes.
ألم تر كيف فعل ربك بعاد إرم ذات الإماد. Is it, do you not know what Allah did to the people of Ad?
Yes.
إرم ذات الإماد. These people, the city of Iram, with lofty pillars. So this group of people, Ad, they're known as a strong group. They had architecture, buildings that no one else had. It says التي لم يخلقوا مثلهم في البلاد, that no one amongst in the lands produced anything like what they did.
Yes.
They're very strong.
They were very tall and strong.
Very strong, and their prophet was also someone strong. Hud was very, very strong, right? And then it mentions وَثَمُودَ الَّذِينَ جَابُوا الصَّخْرَ بِالْوَادِ. So Thamud, another group of people, who would cut out of mountains, they would make their cities.
Yes.
Right?
Yeah.
And then it mentions, let me scroll down, sorry.
This is very interesting when I am like thinking about, I go on a recap, thinking about those people who were tall and strong, how they used to break down the mountains and the trees and make the entire, palaces and strong houses that we can't even imagine how to make it,
Yeah.
Yeah, our men are not so strong. They are not even tall of the centuries, That's, can't imagine that.
Yeah, وَفِرْعَوْنَ ذِي الْأَوْتَادِ. And it says that Pharaoh, so he had, the thing with Pharaoh, and we've all heard of the story of Pharaoh. The thing with his nation, and the specific thing with Pharaoh, was that he was political, very strong. He would kill left and right, right? He would kill the baby. In the story of Musa, it's that he was killing all the baby boys because because of the dream he saw, was that a boy would come, someone from his community would come and take away his power. And so he was doing whatever he could to keep that power. And so he had a very strong foot in his political power. So Allah, in these several verses, He's giving examples of different group of people who had something extraordinary. They either had something physical, they had a lot of power, or they would make their houses out of mountains, which, I mean, we can't do that.
Of course not. They are very strong.
Pharaoh would kill people left and right. I mean, it's unheard of to kill babies. In today's world, I can't even imagine that. But you don't hear such an atrocity happening, right? So each group and every community had their strengths and weaknesses.
Yeah, he was like heartless, Pharaoh. That's what he's mentioning. That he would kill anyone who come in his way.
Exactly. So we see that each group had something, and and this is a sunnah of Allah. Like every community, every group, every nation has something. They have strengths and weaknesses, and I think with today's technology and with today's era, something that I see a lot of people are very proud of or boastful about is technology.
Yes.
Technology is one thing, and then also science. Everyone's like, oh, well, this is what science is, or that's what science is, right? But I think one thing that we've learned with the pandemic is that science isn't as advanced as we think it is. And it really taught us a lesson of humility. That as much as we think we're so advanced in science, we are still
very backward, because I think the people who believe in this, that there's no God, Science created the entire universe and galaxy. So they don't believe in God. So maybe this pandemic, they believe in God.
I mean, I don't know, but it could be. I mean, but it's a lesson to learn. I was actually having a conversation with someone, and I was telling them it's a lesson of humility that we still, there's so much knowledge that we don't have. There's so much science that we don't know about.
The entire world stopped to just watch what is happening because we were just busy running and running and running.
Yeah.
We never stopped. We all stopped to watch each other what's happening.
Exactly.
You know, we are home, your house arrested. We have no choice.
Yeah. So I think it was definitely a lesson. And then, and it's, when you look at the story of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, we see that Bani Umayyah as well, they were also, politically, they were very strong in the sense that they were going against the imams.
Going against the powerful, the sayings of the Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, and the entire people of Syria blindly used to believe in Muawiyah and the Yazid, whatever they said.
Exactly. And you see that, unfortunately, they would, Muawiyah had made it mandatory for people to do la'an in their khutbahs and Friday prayers. So especially against Ali ibn Abi Talib, our first imam, there was a lot of propaganda. There was a lot of enmity going on. And so like you see that they also had something, that they have their strengths. And then the next verse, it says الَّذِينَ تَقَوْا فِي الْبِلْدَادِ, that these people had transgressed in their cities.
Yes.
Right? And so you see each and every of these groups, whether it's Samud, whether it's Ad, whether it's Pharaoh's group.
Any kind of oppressors it's referring to, of the entire world.
Yeah. And it's, again, something that we see in the world of today, where when it's saying transgressed, it's going, that these groups had gone against Allah. They'd gone against the concept of ubudiyah, of servitude toward Allah. And when you do that, what ends up happening, you don't, or you're not subservient to Allah and His commands, you end up transgressing, right? And فَأَكْثَرُهُمْ فِيهَا الْفَسَادِ, and most of them were in so much fasad, corruption. They were drowned in corruption, right? You see that with Pharaoh, you see that with all these different types of groups, each and every of these groups, some of them with riba, some of them with whatever, it was different sins was happening in each group. And each group has a story of what sin they were prevalent in. And it's something that we see it today as well, that the nations who have not bowed down to Allah, like subhanahu wa ta'ala, they're drowned in sin, a lot of them, right? Unfortunately.
Yes.
So when you see the numbers of how many children are coming from wedlock, from not marriage, it's like people aren't having children through marriages anymore.
Yes.
There's just so much, you see, there's so much
lot.
sin.
Everything has become so common nowadays that people just talk normally.
Yeah, unfortunately. So you see فَأَكْثَرُوا فِيهَا الْفَسَادِ. And it's the same thing with Bani Umayyah, Bani Abbas, Bani Umayyah also. They were, Yazid, I think he was definitely showing how corrupt he was. He would drink. He would do so many horrible things, right? فَصَبَّ عَلَيْهِمْ رَبَّكَ صَوْتَ الْعَذَابِ. And says that Allah put them, drowned them with in His adab, in His
punishment. Yes.
Yeah. And so you see that here, this is and you see each and every of these in these groups, you see how Allah puts them through punishment, right? Qawm Ad, Qawm Samud, Pharaoh's drowned, right? And each one had their own punishment.
Yes.
Some of them were stoned in the stories that we have in the Quran. Some of them, and this was it was a miracle for Allah, He would send a punishment in some form or fashion. With Pharaoh, he was drowned in the water. And so you see that they're punished. And then when you look at Bani Umayyah, right, their governance lasted for only a few years after that, after killing for Imam Hussein. And each and every person who killed or did something bad in the story of Karbala, we said that immediately they start seeing punishments happening to them, because what they did was even much graver than a lot of other people, right? Because they were the killers of Imam Hussein and his companions. Each one has their own story of if they robbed Imam Hussein of something, then their hand or whatever they used to rob, something would happen with them. I think there's stories that you can look in history. It's interesting when you read each and every one of them. And then Mukhtar comes and he takes revenge from everyone, basically. So we see that in a sense that they are punished immediately within a few years. Inna rabbaka lamirsad, that your Lord is watchful over it. It's not that Allah's left you and that's it. No, Allah's watching all of this, and if a group of people act in the same way Thamud does, and the group of Ad does, and the group of Bani Umayyah, that punishment will come. There's no
Yes.
doubt.
Whoever is the oppressor,
Exactly.
punishment will come.
So what Allah does is He sends His messengers, He sends His imams, He sends people to guide humanity. Now, if human beings, if a group of people, they don't take that, then Hud will leave, the imam will leave, Imam Hussein was killed, and then the adab will come. Allah sends light to guide human beings. Now, and it's also a hujjah. It's a sign for them, and He'll send more signs as He can. Now, if a group of people still deny it, He will close the hujjah. He will send as many signs, so there's no excuse left. And then Hud will leave the picture, and the darkness will come, and they will be punished by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, right? Again, and then if people take that guidance, like Hur, peace be upon him, he took that guidance. He was between hell and heaven. He takes that. He deciphers, like, well, I'm in between hell and heaven. Which side am I gonna take? And he's like, oh, I choose paradise. I choose Imam Hussein. And he takes that. He gives his life, and he comes from the darkness into light. Imam Hussein is able to do that with him. The magicians that Musa showed his signs, the miracle, and he threw his staff, and it became a big giant and ate all the other snakes. The magicians became believers, right? They came out of the darkness. And so we see that with these, each and every of these stories, it's the same story happening every time.
Yes.
It's not that difficult. And that's why this surah is named after Imam Hussein, because it's the same story happening over and over
about
again.
an oppressor. Haven't you seen what we have done to the oppressors?
Exactly. So what happens to the oppressors, and what happens to people who decide to believe in the imams or the prophets? Now, in the next verses, it talks, where does this come from? How is this people that they choose to take Pharaoh's side? Because for Pharaoh to govern, for Bani Umayyah to govern, people have to allow that to happen, right? Because if you think about it, even in the time of Imam Hussein alayhi salam, the people had asked Imam Hussein to come and govern. And those exact same people fought Imam Hussein. It was the people who fought Imam Hussein. It was the regular people there who asked Imam Hussein to come, and that's how tragic the story is. It's not just the worst people ever. No, it's the regular people who wanted Imam Hussein to be there. So and that's what's extremely
And this was the regular Muslims, who
Yeah.
used to participate in the wars before.
Yeah.
They used to say, we don't have any Khalifa, please come and help. Because he was supposed to be in Mecca.
Yeah.
He was supposed to guiding people in Mecca. Because of the tons of 3 bags of letters, huge bags of letters, at last he sent Muslim ibn Akhil, and then he said, okay, people are with me. Then he came in. And that's how people backed out afterwards.
when the governor changed to Ibn Ziyad, that's when people decided to leave Imam Hussein alayhi salam and leave Muslim ibn Aqil. So going back to the surah, in the next 2 verses, Allah's saying, what is the foundation of this thought? Why are people gravitating toward, okay, Pharaoh should be king? فَأَمَّا الْإِنسَانِ إِذَا ابْتَلَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَأَكْرَمَهُ فَنَعَّمَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَكْرَمَنِ. It says that, but now as for men, when his Lord trieth him, giving him honor and gifts, he said, my Lord hath honored me. The verse is basically saying is that when human beings, insan, it says insan, human beings, have a tendency to think that whenever something's given to them, blessings, for example, money, wealth, they say that, oh, Allah's given me honor, that I'm better than other people. And this is the type of the mentality the people during the time of Pharaoh had. They saw that Pharaoh had money, he had wealth, he had power, and said, okay, no, then Allah's honored him, and he deserves that power, and he deserves, because this is something that Allah's done. And on the flip side, وَأَمَّا إِذَا مَا ابْتَلَاهُ فَقَدَرَ عَلَيْهِ رِزْقَهُ فَيَقُولُ رَبِّي أَهَانَنِ. But when we tried him, restricting his sustenance for him, then he said, my Lord hath humiliated me. That whenever Allah tries them, in the sense that he takes away some of his rizq and makes him poor, takes away his power or whatever, this is when human beings have a tendency to say, oh, Allah's humiliated me.
Yes.
Right? And this is the type of thinking where it allows someone like people of like Bani Umayyah to rule, for Muawiyah to rule, for Yazid to rule. Because they think, oh, they have power, so Allah loves them, or Allah's honored them. We don't have money, and Allah doesn't
I think
love
the
us.
best example is the Bibi Zainab Salamullah alaiha. Even after losing her entire family, she said, all I see is beauty.
Yeah.
She never says, all I see is humiliation.
Exactly.
Though Yazid told her like that, but she says, no, you are humiliated, we are honored.
Yeah. So in the verse it's saying, إِذَا مَبْتَلَاهُ, that Allah's trying people, whether He's giving a person wealth, whether He's giving people poverty, or whether He's giving people health or sickness, each and every one of them is a trial, it's a test to see how is that human being going to react to it. So if Imam Hussein's going through this difficult trial of losing his beloved family, of losing his beloved companions, it's a trial for him, it's a test for him. It's the same thing with Zainab alayhi salam. It's the same with Pharaoh. It's the same thing with the magicians. It's the same thing with Bani Abbas, Bani Umayyah, with the Ad, Samud, all those people, right? It's a trial, it's a test. Allah will give to some and He will take from some. And He's watching, He's looking to see how is people going to react to it, right? And so it's important to realize that this mentality to think that, oh, if I get a blessing, then Allah's honoring me. No, that's not what the reality of it. It's a test. And Allah's watching you. How are you going to react to it? What are you going to do? If He gives you a blessing, are you going to thank Allah? Or are you going to stop thanking Allah? Or you're going to think, I'm better than other people? Like the way Pharaoh thought. He said, Ana rabbukum al-a'la. I'm the Lord. I'm the best Lord. He made himself as a Rabb. Like he saw himself as a Lord. And this is sometimes some people will do this. It's not just Pharaoh. Sometimes human beings will do this. They have a tendency to think, oh, I'm better than another person.
Yes,
because
there is.
they have, and it's not just money too, mind you. It could be intelligence.
Yeah.
It could be knowledge. It could be a degree.
Yeah.
There's different things in this world that Allah will give us. All of this is a rizq. Marriage is a rizq. Family, children is a rizq. It's a sustenance. All these things are sustenance. Knowledge, having a degree, being a star, being famous,
having a position,
political position. It could be anything. All of these are things that Allah will bless to someone, but it's as a test.
Yeah.
And sometimes as Muslims, we're like, well, but having something, being blessed with money and with family and all of this, inshallah, we all are tested like that, not with poverty and not having with having
any kids or health,
or like with our health, or God forbid if someone has cancer, like may Allah never test us like this. But the reality is, it's usually the opposite, where most people do better in being in poverty. They actually respond better to that versus being rich. It's interesting because the scholar was saying that when they compared the time of Yusuf being in that well, right? His brothers threw him in a well. And between the time when he was in the kingdom and he had power, it was easier for him when he was in the well. Because when you're in that state of destitution, it's easier to turn to Allah than versus when you have power and you're
always turning to Allah, you're always asking help to get out of the well.
Yeah, but when you're rich, it's harder.
Yeah.
There's more chance of you becoming arrogant and seeing it from yourself, not from Allah, and not thanking Allah for all that He's given you. So it's important for us to not have this mentality, because that is how we see, like, and this is something we see in today's world too. It's very, very a dominant type of thinking, where we look up to people who are doing financially well. We look up to people who have
a name,
who have power, position, all that. And of course, it's honorable, that work they did. No, it's not to say that we shouldn't try to gain
like
sustenance.
that. We should.
In the sense that we should try to gain money, and I will say it in the halal way, obviously, but in the sense that, yes, that's a good thing. The fact that people are working hard and trying to, they're putting all the work, and that's honorable. We have to work to gain sustenance. If you don't put your work your work in there to gain sustenance. Allah won't give you the sustenance. But if you put do all the work, it could be the chance that Allah will give that sustenance. It might be your rizq, it might not be your rizq. But He will give what is your rizq, for sure, if you do put that sustenance. Now, it's important to consider that if something is not your rizq, and you try to gain it through a haram means, then you're committing a sin. But that itself was your rizq to begin with. You could have still gotten it through a halal way. Does that make sense? That like even if something is, try to gain it through a haram means, you just gain punishment for yourself with that rizq. And that you would have still gotten it. Because your rizq will be given to you. There's no doubt that if you put your work in there, it will be given to you. So it's a very thin line, but it's really important that we don't look up to people who are very rich and be like, oh, like I need to be like them. Well, you can do that work, you can learn the work ethic, but in terms of everything else, if that person doesn't have piety, why are you looking up to that person?
Yes.
There are things that we can learn from other people. I don't want to say that you can't learn from these type of people.
You need to be humble and down to earth.
There's always things that you can learn, and I disagree to say that, oh, you can't learn from them. You can learn from them, but at the same time, recognize that only in certain aspects you can take them on a role model, not on every aspect. Because if they are not believers, then in terms of their faith,
yeah, that's true.
How can you
Because
take them
this
as a role
example
model?
goes as the followers of film actors or any kind of
Yeah.
sportsmen, where you love a film, you love a sports is different. But when you start following their life, it makes no sense because you don't know how that person is in this person's life. Okay, the person is successful, hardworking, doing a great job, whatever the situation is, but why are you getting inside the personal life of the person, trying to follow? You say the fan following gets crazy, you know. I think the fan following is a little stupid thing for me because as a teenager I was a follower of someone. But following an actors is okay.
I can understand why people do it.
Yeah.
And the work that they put in is honorable because acting is also a hard job.
Very hard job.
It's not easy,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
And
very hard
a
job.
good actor, that's honorable. That's
Yes.
But at the same time, like you can learn certain things from that person's life, but on all aspects of this
Yeah.
life, you can't take
You
everything and
can't take because the
emulate
person
that.
is not a sinless person.
Yeah,
So
so
leave that personal life alone and let him live his life, whatever he wants to live.
you might even learn a few things
Good-
from
good
there,
things,
good things, right?
yeah.
You have to be careful because this is the thing. We also have hadith from our imams that a mu'min also, there might be a truth coming from the heart of a munafiq
Yeah.
that a mu'min can take and learn.
Take it, yeah.
So this is the thing, we can learn from them. There's certain
Yeah.
things that we can learn, but we have to be careful. Like,
We have
what
to
are we
be, yeah.
taking in and what are we taking out? Is it this type of mentality with the Quran saying that, oh, we think, okay, if we blessed this fame to this person, it doesn't mean Allah's honored them. It's a test for them to see how that person is going to react. We have to recognize that this is a test for them. They might fail that test. They might take it and do good at it. Be good at it.
Yeah,
So you have to
true.
recognize that it doesn't mean that Allah is blessing them, that they're necessarily a better person. Because inna akramakum inna atqakum, the person who is the best is the one who has most piety. That's the standard of who is better than someone else. That's the main standard, and that's what we have to consider, right? So I think that's really important that we have this type of mind frame when we're looking at these people's lives, and so that we don't fall in this trap, right? And I think this is something you see in people's lives. I remember there was a family member who was going through something difficult where their child had a need of surgery, heart surgery, right? And that person was just, the father was just really angry and upset. Why is Allah doing this to me? Da, 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 like asking, questioning, everything. And then in my mind, I was like thinking to myself, like, Allah's giving you wealth. Allah's giving you all these things. He's giving you success in your job. He's giving you wealth. He's giving you a good family. He's giving you happiness. And now He's taken one thing away from you.
Yeah.
And you're like,
Yeah. And then you start feeling that Allah is humiliating us.
yeah,
you
but
know.
that's not the case. It's a
Yeah,
test,
it's a
and
test.
it's a test, and it's a way that Allah is making us closer to Him. When He's putting us through these hardships, He's getting us closer to Him, right? Because it says "Al-Fajr wa layali al-ash wa shafi wal-wat," that the same way that in the darkness during Fajr you go to light, a human being can get there. And these hardships are a way that we can get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala if we let them.
Definitely, definitely. So with that, we do understand how is this Surah Fajr is connected with Imam Hussain alayhi salam,
Yes.
because it is definitely talking about the process of all the time, how Allah is going to treat them on the day of judgment, because Allah is going to be the greatest on that day.
Exactly.
Allah is great all the time, but we don't realize that. So definitely it makes sense how it is connected. Thank you so much, Sister Mariam, for being part of this show. Today was the last episode, and we have discussed a lot of great things about how to prove Allah for Imam Hussain during the time of Corona. We discussed the poetries of how it is beneficial and how much more we should be doing. What did we learn from the event of Karbala? What did we learn from Bibi Zainab Salamullah alaiha? That was the beautiful thing. And we have learned about how is it Surah Fajr is connected with Imam Hussain alayhi salam. So thank you so much, sister, for being part of this show. And thank you so much, everyone, for watching us all the 11 episodes with so many interesting topics. Again, our condolences to the Imam of the time, Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, for going through a big tragedy, and Bibi Fatima Zahra, Salamullah alaiha, how she lost her entire family in one day. I hope we all pray that we all become the companion of Imam Zamana and help him, pray for his reappearance. So until then, Salamun alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.